I'm going to read John chapter 15. Everybody knows about John chapter 15 being the vine and the branches and the fruit. In verse 16, though, Jesus comes and he says, "You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain or last, or to be continuous, or to survive, or to be kept, that whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it you." Now, Jesus talks about the fruit of man remaining, but he starts off this entire chapter, or this entire sermon. He obviously didn't have chapters, but he starts off and he talks about a vine and the branches. Now, in Isaiah 5 and in Matthew 21, it's the same. Jesus quotes Isaiah 5. God's people are likened to a vine, and or the branches, or a vineyard. So God's people is likened to this vineyard. Now, I've never had other grapes on a vine, other fruit on a vine but grapes. You cannot find anything else on a vine but grapes. Now, in Galatians 5, there are 9 fruits of the Spirit, but if you look at Song of Solomon, there's 3 extra, and if you look at Revelation, in the end, there's 3 extra. And one of them are grapes, the vine, the fruit of the vine, speaking of a surrender and a giving over and a humility. You see, the vine, it needs something to climb up against. The branches, well, Jesus, let's start with Jesus, him being the vine and we being the branches. Jesus, he said, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." The shape that Jesus took on was God the Father in flesh. It was God in flesh, Emmanuel, God with us, the Word that became flesh. So he comes and he says, "Well, I have taken on the shape of my Father. Now you are the branches." So Jesus, ek weet nie wat se Engelse woord hy het gerank against like a creeper takes on the shape of something. He took on the shape of the Father. And then the branches goes onto this form to carry fruit. But without the vine, the branches cannot bear any fruit. We know this. But it comes with keywords. It says, "He that is in me and I in him, that bears fruit." Now there are branches in him that he said that does not bear fruit. That he says those branches gets cut away. But the branches in me that bears fruit, he said he purges it. He cleanses it. He cuts away unnecessary shoots so that it can bring forth more fruit. So God comes, God being the husbandman or the vine dresser, he cuts away everything that is unnecessary, everything that is hurtful, everything that stands in our way. And he comes in with the pruning shears and he starts cutting the water shoots. Water shoots looks great, but it has no value. And we're always going after the water shoots. So he comes and he cuts away the water shoots that it might look great, but it doesn't add anything. It's hypocrisy, where it's a mask and it's a form with no godliness. He comes and he prunes that, and it's painful. We know this. It's painful, and he cuts it away, and he refines, and he shapes this branch, and he cuts it, and he tenderly looking after this thing so that there will be fruit. God is looking for fruit. Now in Malachi chapter 3, verses 2 and 3, he comes and he says, "But who may abide the day of his coming? And who shall stand when he appeareth? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like a fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi, the priesthood, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness." Now, when did righteousness come in? That came in with Jesus. We don't have righteousness apart from Jesus. So a lot of the prophecies is, yes, absolutely, they point to Israel. They point to the nation of Israel, but parallel to that runs the church as well. So there's so many prophecies that was prophesied in the Old Testament that was about the church age that we can take for ourselves. So he comes here, but he says he sits like a refiner and the purifier of silver. Now, I looked it up a little bit, and it's actually a very basic process. You got to make the fire hot enough. Now, the refiner knows exactly how hot to make it. And he would then sit and he would put the silver within this, call it a basin, that he starts heating up so that the dross and the silver can separate. Now, the question was that this person in the article asked was, so how do you know when the silver is now pure enough? And the answer is when the refiner can see his own reflection within the silver. In Romans 8, he says that all scripture, not all scripture, he said that all things are given by, let me calm down. All things work together for our good. All things. I'm trying not to run ahead of myself, and I am. You see, let me talk to you. There's a Christianity out there where everything is just dandy. I don't know that kind of Christianity. I've got battles. I've got things I need to be purified from. I don't know Christianity in a life that is without pain and suffering. Is it a morbid Christianity? No. But it takes the shallowness out of you. And you start moving in circles, and it's almost like, what's wrong with you? Why are you struggling? Maybe I'm just in the refiner's fire. There are real situations in life, and everybody has them. There are real things happening to each one. And Wednesday, I was going to preach something else, but Wednesday in prayer meeting, I felt the Lord speaking to me and said, there's a crushing coming. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell anybody, because if I heard wrong, I'm not going to speak it over nobody. And then Thursday morning came. And I realized it was the Spirit of God. So I started looking at the crushing. And I started seeing two things. I started seeing the refiner's fire, where the refiner sits and he comes and he heats things up in life to purify, to cleanse. Now people say that's Old Testament. Well, in the New Testament, in Hebrews 12, God says He chastens. You say this Christianity that reckons that God doesn't chasten anymore. You need to explain to me Hebrews 12, verses 5 to 11. He says, despise not the day of chastening, for whom He loves, He scourges. For whom He loves, He rebukes, He chastens and scourges. And then He says, why? And He says it so beautifully, for our profit. He scourges for our profit. He scourges and chastens us so that we can be partakers of His holiness, sharers in His holiness. And then number 3, yield, bring forth the peaceable fruit of righteousness. Now that's the one side of it. The other side, if we look at the Garden of Eden, the first thing God said to them was He blessed them. God never said to them, bring forth something that I haven't provided for. It said God blessed them. And that word blessed means to give something to somebody's advantage. So God blessed them, and then He said to them, bring forth fruit and multiply and replenish and subdue and have dominion. So he talks about, he blesses them to bring forth fruit. But you see, the fruit, a tree, I've never seen a tree that eats its own fruit. Now, Isaiah 53, he speaks about the crucifixion in verses 10 to 12. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He hath put him to grief. When thou shalt make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed. He shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper. The will of the Lord shall succeed, shall advance in his hand. So he was talking about a fruitfulness of Jesus that shall remain. His days shall be prolonged. He shall see his seed. When Jesus, he could not shed his seed if there wasn't a dying first. He had to be crushed first so that we can be partakers of this juice of the vine, so to speak. It did not come from anywhere else. He is the vine, and his fruit also had to be crushed. And he says that his seed, he shall see it. He shall see the fruit thereof. He shall see the success thereof. He will advance God's will. He shall see of the travail of his soul, and shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore will I divide him a portion with the great, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he hath poured out his soul unto death. And he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bare the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. Now, John 12, verses 23 and 24, Jesus said, except the corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it brings forth much fruit. And then he says, come and follow me. And then he speaks about laying down your life. And you see, Jesus could have said, well, this is my fruit, and hold on to it. But it had to die before it could yield fruit for others. Now, Isaiah 5, I want to read there, Isaiah 5, verses 1 and 2, that was repeated in Matthew 21. He says, now will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved, touching his vineyard, touching his garden, touching his habitation. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. Talk about Zion. So many times the church is likened to Zion in the New Testament. And he fenced it. Now he spoke about Judah being the vineyard, or Israel being the vineyard. It's his people. Now he fenced it. He hedged it about. He put a fence around his vineyard. You see, you being and me being God's people, he puts a fence around us, and that's a fence of protection, but it's also a fence of restriction. So I cannot just do what I want to do, how I want to do it, serve the Lord the way I want to serve him. No. He says that's not where the protection comes in. That's not where the presence is going to dwell. I've fenced you to protect you, but also to restrict you. And he gathered out the stones thereof, the stones of rebellion. And he planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it. So if you look at the vineyards of the day, they literally built built walls around the vineyard, and then they would put thorns on the outside. And they would keep wild animals away and thieves away, but then they would have a tower in the middle of the vineyard that if there's any danger that came, they could run into, they could hide there, but also they could guard and keep watch, and they could keep everything safe in it. Now the Bible says the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runs into it and are safe. So God comes and he puts a tower in there. But then he says he planted with choicest vine and built a tower in the midst of, and also made a wine press. He comes and he makes this beautiful vineyard, his people. And he puts this beautiful vine in it with this beautiful tower in it. But he puts a wine press in there. Now, a wine press speaks of crushing. That's a place where the grapes are being crushed. So, and it usually had two sides where the grapes are crushed, and then another basin where the juice from the crushed grapes are being collected. So they would climb in and they would start treading out these grapes so that the juice can start flowing. But what was that for? It was to preserve the fruit. If you just take today the shelf life, I went and Googled it a bit. So if I'm wrong, go take it up with Google. But out of principle, I know it is true. If you take grapes, it won't last nearly as long as its juice. Now, treading out the winepress in Revelation talks about judgment. God's judging and God's wrath. It says he will tread them out like the winepress and their blood will fill it up. And you see, that is after the time of grace. We are now in the time of grace. And we are living in God's grace and his love. And the winepress usually was about blessing. It was about joy. It was about harvest. It was a joyous occasion. But the grapes still had to be crushed and pressed so that the juice can flow. But from there, it was used for celebration. It was used for wedding ceremonies. It was used for, if they had company and they wanted to celebrate something, they would bring out the juice that they got from the vine and they would partake of it, and there will be this fellowship. There will be this rejoicing over the harvest that came in, or over the visit, or over the fellowship. It's a joyous occasion. It's not something that was dampened or pressed down, but obviously there was still a crushing. You can go just look up winepress in the Bible, how many things happened at the winepress. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, but it brought forth wild grapes. Now, John 15, he comes and he says, in verse 16, I ordained you that you should go and bring forth fruit. He said, I've ordained you and called you to bring forth fruit. But then he talks about your fruit remaining. And that takes a crushing. You see, from here, present your body as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God. For this is your reasonable service. So God will come, and you will walk with him, and you will grow, and you will get close to him. And then one day, he says, it's time for the wine press. Because this needs to remain. And this is where I experience some of you definitely are. We don't understand the crushing. And it's painful. And I've been living. And I've been doing my best. And I've been giving my all. And I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried, and I've tried. And I've tried, and I don't understand why things are not working out. But, you see, this speaks of a life surrendered to God. A life that is poured out to him. So that when the celebration comes, the fruit has remained. this can take up this form. It can take up the basin's form. It can take up this form. It can take up any form, because it is not in its own shape and form anymore. It is now into whatever the master pours it into. Whatever he wants, how he wants it, when he wants it. And then when there's a celebration, here is partake of the fruit of my servant's surrender. Partake of the fruit of a life lived with me. You see, don't despise the crushing. Don't despise the feet of the Lord. When Jacob wrestled, he wrestled and he picked up a halt. When God wrestled with Jacob, Jacob didn't wrestle with God. God came down to wrestle with Jacob. And Jacob, as he wrestled, he would not let him go. And he said, let me go, for the sun is coming up. And he said to him, not until you bless me. And he changed his name. He changed, this is not a grape anymore, so to speak. This is now the fruit, the juice from the grape, juice from the vine. And he changed his name. That was the blessing, but the mark of it was a halt. It was a walk that started looking different. It's a walk that was not the same anymore. He couldn't walk the way he wanted to walk anymore. He was touched by God. He was blessed by God. But the effects of it didn't look like he might have wanted it to look. But he always relied on God. He always had to rely on God. He says in Micah 4, verses 6 and 7. In that day, saith the Lord, will I assemble her that halteth, and I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. And I will make her that halteth a remnant, and her that was cast far off a strong nation. And the Lord shall reign over them in Mount Zion from henceforth, even forever. And I know this is a prophecy about Israel coming together, but God is also gathering His church together. But there's a remnant church that have not despised the crushing. They have not despised the treading out. They have not despised the turning from a grape into a liquid form, glorifying God, to be changed into the image of God. All things work together for good. All things, for whom He did foreknow, He did predestinate. For what? To be conformed, shaped into the image of His Son. He said, there's that song, broken and poured out. Talking about Jesus, and then because He was broken and poured out, I can be broken and poured out. Bruised and crushed. Now, if we're going to become like Jesus, I don't get bruised and crushed for sin's sake. He took all the sin of the world upon Himself. I'm talking about growth. I'm talking about becoming like Him. I'm talking about being purified. I'm talking about being washed by the waters of His Word. I'm talking about being changed into the image of the Son. I'm talking about being changed into the glory that the church can be presented, a glorious church. You see, we get bogged down and we run and we hide, and intimacy is an issue, and nobody wants to be intimate and vulnerable anymore today because it hurts, it's painful. But there's a crushing for the fruit to remain in your life. You can go and take this and put it on the shelf till the time comes. And you can take it off the shelf and you can celebrate with someone. The Master, I wonder how many bottles do I have on my shelf that the Master have placed there? And how many times have I climbed out of the wine press? You see, the wine press is not to kill you. The wine press is to make you alive. It's so that your fruit can remain. So that you can continue in His love. That you can, that He can be glorified. And it's the most painful thing because it feels so wrong. It just doesn't feel comfortable, doesn't feel right. It feels out of sorts. But without this crushing, the grapes on the vine will just wither and disappear. But He will make them that halteth a remnant. You see, when you've been through a crushing, you know it. Your speech changes. Your thoughts changes. Now you can go through a crushing and become bitter. We can kick up against God and we can try to run away from God, and we do that pretty well until we run into a wall because God's mercy has put a fence around the vineyard. Like Mario said, when you hit the wall and you're lying on your back, there's only one way you can look, and it's up. And that happens. You run on the wall, you lie on your back, you say, God, this is not how I planned my life. This is not how I saw this going. And then we get up and we see the vineyard again, and we see the tower again, and we taste of the grapes again, and we see, but hey, there's no other place I'd rather be, there's no other place I can be. And you go and you climb into the wine press, and God's feet just goes, I'm preserving your fruit. I'm preserving your fruit. I'm separating. The danger of that time, during that time, is to try and ease the pain with things that are not godly and godlike. It's to ease the pain of what's busy happening, because it is painful to the flesh. But after that, there's a closeness, there's a knowing God that you didn't have before. There's a surrender that you haven't had before. There's a humility you haven't had before. You might be walking with a limp. But He says, there's my remnant. There's my remnant. There's my remnant. There's my remnant. He said to Israel, I've chosen you in the furnace of affliction. That word chosen, it means to select, to cut off. It means to be ripe. I've chosen you out of the furnace of affliction, and now it's going to be a wine press experience. The bride in Song of Solomon, she said in chapter 7, she said, let us go to the vineyard and look for the tender grapes, the buds starting to show. She was excited about the vineyard. She was excited about what He's busy doing in His vineyard. Excited about the fruits of surrender and humility and obedience. That's what she ran after. That's what she looked for. That's what she wanted. The world will tell you all kinds of things, especially when doing the will of the Lord is not easy. When it's difficult. But I thought doing God's will just be easy. God is busy working. He's busy sitting as a refiner. He's busy with the wine press. And the most liberty that you and I will experience, the closeness, the most intimacy we will experience with the Lord, is yielding and surrender. Let all things work together for good. Now there's a time to war and a time for all of this. I understand that, and resist the devil and he shall flee. I'm not talking about that. Job had this incredible experience where for 2 chapters, only 2 chapters in Job, Satan's name was mentioned. After that, not again. But you see, what God did was, Satan came before him. And this is such a controversial topic in the church. Somehow people get stuck there. Now, first of all, the God of the Old Testament is as merciful as the God of the New Testament. He's the same God. And I can prove that every day of the week and twice on a Sunday. And he comes and he says, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered my servant Enrico? Have you considered my servant Jock? Have you considered my servant Robin? A more perfect man and woman you cannot find on this earth. And Job said, and Satan said about Job, well, does he serve you for naught? You protect him. You've got a fence around him. Take away all the fence and take away all the blessings. He will curse you to your face. God said, let's try. Let me show you who my servant Job is. Go and try. And that is the thing. I'm sorry. When you serve God and you don't see, you see the loss, you don't see the gain. You see the pain, you don't see the blessing. And Job went and the fence was taken away and he lost everything. He lost everything and he said, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh. You see, we love the part of God that gives, but we don't love the part of God that takes. We don't trust the God that takes is the same God that gives. So Satan was saying, it's because Job, I'm paraphrasing, Job only knows the God that gives. And God said, well, let me show you the God that takes. And Job will not curse me. So God went and said, okay, you can go, Satan, but you're not allowed to touch his life. And you know what happened? He lost everything. And through all of those chapters after that, Job had this eternal struggle coming out, justifying God, and then again walking in his own righteousness, putting his own righteousness before God and say, God, you see, this is what I have done. When I walked in, the widows was happy. My steps were oiled. I was so anointed. When I walked into the gates, all the elders put their hands on their mouths and just kept quiet and said, Job is here, the wisdom of Job. And now I'm going through all of this. I have served you, I've loved you. But he started off saying that he's the God that takes. And Job went through all of that. In the end, the words that stands out the most, you can see the change that happened in Job. He said, I have heard of thee with the hearing of the ear. But now, he says, my eye sees. And when his eye saw, he bowed down and he repented in dust and ashes because he saw a part of himself that he would never have seen any other way. But God wasn't mad at him. God didn't have an attitude against him. God didn't come to him and say, well, you little pipsqueak. No, he walked through all of this so that Job can come and know God better in the end of the day. And God restored unto him everything that was taken. But he had to go through how many years? To come to a place where he could bow down and say, now my eye sees. And he turned to his friends and he said, God, judge them. No. He prayed for them. You see, because he now could see that they were part of his discovering of God. He now could see that everything he went through, everything they said against him, because that's what they said. It's because of your sin, Job. It's because of your unrighteousness, Job. It's because you messed up, Job. And Job's like, can't be. We mess up all the time, but God doesn't deal with us according to that. And God was busy working, God was busy shaping, God was busy stirring, God was busy moving. And then God comes and says, Job, you're so concerned with your own righteousness. Have you ever been concerned with my righteousness? I'm the one that created this. I'm the one that created that. I'm the one that put this in place. I'm the one that put that in place. Can you do any of that? No. Exactly. Why aren't you as concerned with my righteousness? So God came and he put his motives in place, and he showed him exactly who he was. He showed him who God was, and he showed him who he himself was. God did the same with Israel. In Deuteronomy 1, he says, I have caused you to hunger so that I can feed you. It's not a mean God. He just knows how things work. And the toughest time is when you come into a place where you are serving God in the lack, and you're serving God in the crushing, and you're serving God in the refiner's fire, and you're serving God in the taking away. And everything inside of you screams, you're unfair, you're unjust. For 12 years I've been struggling. It's not fair. I'm a hard worker. I'm an honest man. Why, Lord? Why? Then God comes and says, when your mouth is sanctified and changed, when I see myself, when there's enough fruit for the feast and the celebration, and in this time, God doesn't just take and He gives. But when a person is in the crushing, it's so easy to accuse God and His nature. And the biggest fight is not the fight for survival. The biggest fight is not to accuse God's nature. I know it's quiet in here today. I hope I'm not killing you all. Maybe it's just a little bit of my life. Do we serve God for naught? Or do we serve God for who He is? Do we know that God is love? Do we know that God is just? Do we know that God is working everything for our good? Even when He chastises, it's for our profit, so that we can be partakers of holiness. But sometimes He's just getting the fruit off the vine. And it's exciting. And He bottles it and says, now the next. Now for the next fruit. Now for the next season. Now for the next thing. And He comes and He stores that and He crushes that. And every time it's painful, but every time when we yield and we give ourselves, there is a remaining of the fruit that comes out of that, with an intimacy with God that you haven't had before. Life can get messy, can get tough. That doesn't mean God has deserted you. And what the enemy would like you to do is to turn your back on God. Or we know not to turn our backs on God, so we become really spiritual in certain areas and we keep God out of other areas. Because we're Christians. We do things different. We're so good at running, and we're so good at hiding, and we're so good at just not facing, just not dealing. And God's like, but come, I'm a good Father. Let me go take you through the crushing. Let me take you through the purifying. Because after that, you're a partaker of my holiness. We've got this knowing, this. We've got this intimacy. But God, it's been 12 years. For me at least. So we're going to minister to one another today with the foot washing. You don't have to do foot washing. Somebody was very concerned about the foot. Nobody here. Somebody was very concerned about the foot washing. Do they have to do feet washing? But there's something about our walk with God. Our feet speaks of discipleship. Our feet speaks of authority. It speaks of judgment. But when Jesus sent them into the cities, he said, if you go into any house and you preach and they receive you not, he said, walk out and shake the dust of that house, of that city, off of your feet. That's just dust. You should have seen Simon and Ruaan and London, them, their faces were so full of dust, only the teeth stuck, it was white. You could see them just by that. But it's just dust, it just washed off. So natural dust does nothing to you. Food might be a little bit grindy. But he could not have been speaking just about natural dust because it does nothing bad to you. The dust of rejection, the dust of rebellion, the dust of pain. There's all kinds. We walk through this world and we pick up all this dust, spiritually speaking. And Jesus came and he gathered his disciples and he had this supper prepared for them, and he got up and he washed their feet. And Peter said, no, Lord, Master, you don't wash my feet. I mean, you're my master. He said, Peter, shut up. You don't understand what I'm doing now, but you will after this. And Peter said, okay, but wash my, then it's fine, but wash my hands and my head as well, not just my feet. Jesus said, Peter, you're clean. A man that's clean doesn't have to wash everywhere, just his feet. Still just his feet. And then Jesus went to all his disciples and he washed their feet. And when he was done, he said, you call me master, and you say well, because I am your Lord and I am your master. He said, but as I have done this to you, given you an example, go and do this to one another as well. Now, I know it was a custom in the day. They wore sandals and they walked through dust, and so they washed feet, and talks about servitude and all of that and blah, blah, blah. But let's put theology just a little bit aside and just come back to the practical Christianity. We wear closed shoes today, so our feet are nice and clean, I hope. But there's still a spiritual dust. And I want to invite you, don't just wash, if you're washing feet, don't just wash the same person's feet like you've always washed. Wash somebody else's feet. Minister unto somebody. In this day and age where things are gearing up, we need less of this world on our feet. Less of this world in our walk. Less of the bitterness. Less of the pain. Because what does pain do when we hold on to it? We see everything through that glass, and we judge every circumstance, situation, and person through that glass of pain and loss. Not knowing, but God is there wanting to bless and give and embrace and bring you closer. So, I'm inviting you. I'm not telling you to do it. If you don't want to, God bless you. We'll be praying for you still. But if you want to, find somebody that the Spirit maybe is laying on your heart. And take your turns. We only have so many basins, minus one. And you can wash one another's feet. Pray over that person whose feet you are washing. Pray over them. As the Spirit leads you, minister to them. Let us minister to one another and Maybe somebody is going through this crushing right now and they just need somebody to stand with them. Maybe somebody is going through refiner's fire and they just need some encouragement. Maybe somebody is just having a hard time. Maybe somebody is blessed. Nothing wrong with that. Blessed in the sense of they're in a season of new growth and it's easy and it's great and it's fantastic. Well, that needs to remain. Then you pray for that person to remain as well. So we're going to pray over the basins. Can I ask the deacons to come and just move the basins forward?